They spoke of power. They spoke of tradition. They spoke of the one who defied them all. Princess Odono. No suitors had come for her hand. No man had dared to step forward, not because she was unworthy, but because she was unlike any woman Udi had ever seen. She did not wait behind palace walls, did not lower her gaze in submission. She fought. She ruled. She refused to bend. And for that, they feared her. The throne cannot sit empty, a chief muttered, his voice thick with tension. The king is weak. The princess is unwilling to change. Beyond the walls of the chamber, Odono stood in the shadows, her fist clenched, her heart pounding like war drums. She had had enough. If Udi would not give her the right to rule, then she would take it. And if they thought she would fall without a husband by her side, they were about to see how wrong they were. The kingdom of Udi was a land of great warriors and even greater traditions, where kings were chosen not only by blood but by strength, wisdom, and the will of the gods. At the heart of this powerful kingdom stood Princess Odono, the first daughter of King Ofoma, a woman unlike any the land had ever seen. She was not the delicate flower expected of royal daughters, not the meek beauty who sat quietly behind veils, waiting for marriage to secure her power. No, Odono was fire and steel, trained in combat from a young age, her hands more familiar with the weight of a spear than the softness of silk. And for that, the people feared her. In Udi, tradition dictated that a king's first daughter could only ascend the throne if she was married before her father's passing. It was a law as ancient as the land itself, a decree meant to ensure that no woman ruled alone. But Odono had no suitors, not because she was unworthy, but because no man dared to stand beside her. Whispers followed her wherever she went, murmurs of a princess too strong, too wild, too dangerous. She fights like a man, they would say. She speaks as if she were a chief. Others claimed she was cursed, that the gods had made her mighty but barren, unfit to bear heirs. And so, one by one, the men of Udi and beyond turned away, unwilling to take the challenge that came with marrying the warrior princess. And without a husband, she could never be queen. Her younger sister, Amora, was the opposite in every way. Beautiful, charming, and sweet-spoken, she was adored by the people, the kind of princess bards sang about in their tales. Where Odono was battle-hardened, Amora was delicate. Where Odono's hands were calloused from training, Amora's fingers were soft, adorned with golden rings. And most importantly, where Odono had no suitors, Amora had plenty. She watched her sister struggle against the chains of tradition and saw an opportunity. If Odono cannot marry, she whispered to those who would listen, then perhaps she was never meant to be queen at all. And so, while Odono fought to prove her worth, Amora fought a different kind of battle, one waged in the shadows, built on whispers, deception, and well-placed doubt. When King Ofoma fell ill, the kingdom was thrown into unrest. The once mighty ruler, now frail and weak, became a symbol of Udi's uncertain future. The elders gathered in secret, their voices hushed with concern. "The king will not live much longer," one of them said. "And the princess, she is still unwed." Chief Chiti, a powerful noble who had long sought the throne for himself, saw his moment. "If she cannot fulfill tradition, then the throne must go to the next ruling family," he argued. And so, the plot was set. Amora, who had always been a willing pawn, played her role well. She whispered to the villagers, stirring their fears. "Our father grows weaker by the day," she said, feigning sorrow. And still, Odono refuses to marry. How can a woman who cannot even find a husband hope to rule a kingdom? The doubts grew, spreading like wildfire through Udi. But Odono was not blind. She saw the way the people looked at her, the hesitation in their voices when they spoke her name. She heard the murmurs that followed her through the palace halls. She knew Amora's game, but she had little time to fight a battle of words when her father lay dying. Every day, she sat by his side, gripping his hand, willing him to stay just a little longer. "Father, I will make you proud," she whispered. "I will find a way to save this kingdom." Then came the day of the royal gathering, a time-honored tradition where suitors from across the land presented themselves for the hand of the princess. It was a chance for Odono to prove the elders wrong, to show them that she was still worthy. But when the time came, the hall stood empty. Not a single warrior, not a single prince, had come forward. The silence was deafening. And Amara smiled. Chief Chiti seized the moment. "The gods have spoken," he declared, rising from his seat. "The princess is unfit to rule. The throne must go to a leader chosen by tradition." The elders murmured in agreement, the people nodded fearfully. Amara stepped forward, her face the picture of sorrow. "Sister, I love you," she said, her voice thick with false kindness. "But perhaps, this is the will of the gods." Odono's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to fight, to shout, to demand her right. But deep down, she knew the truth. Without a husband, she had no claim. And the kingdom of Udi was slipping through her fingers. But as she stood there, feeling the weight of defeat press against her chest, a voice rang through the hall. "I will marry her." Gasps filled the room. All heads turned toward the entrance, where a figure stood, cloaked in dust from the road, his stance strong, unwavering. He was no prince, no noble. He was a stranger. But as he stepped forward, meeting Odono's gaze with unwavering confidence, a spark of something dangerous and powerful ignited in her heart. And in that moment, everything changed. A hush fell over the great hall of Udi, so heavy it seemed to press against the very walls. Every eye turned toward the stranger, their expressions a mixture of shock, suspicion, and disbelief. Who was this man who dared to claim the mighty Princess Odono? He was no prince draped in fine robes, no noble adorned with gold and jewels. He was dressed in the simple attire of a warrior, his dark skin kissed by the sun, his muscles honed from years of battle. His presence alone was commanding, and yet, it was his voice, steady, fearless, that silenced the room. "I will marry her," he repeated, his gaze locked onto Odono's. Odono, still reeling from the betrayal of her sister and the humiliation of an empty suitor's hall, studied the man before her. He stood tall, unflinching beneath the scrutiny of the elders and nobles. His face was unfamiliar, his name unknown, but something in his eyes, a fire that mirrored her own, made her pulse quicken. This was no ordinary man. Chief Chiti was the first to recover, his lips curling into a sneer. "And who are you to speak in the presence of kings?" he demanded. "What name do you bear, warrior? What house claims you? What riches do you bring?" The stranger met the chief's gaze with calm defiance. "My name is Obina," he said. "I come not from a house of nobles, but from the warrior clan of Izimba, a land where men are judged not by birth, but by their strength and honor. I bring no riches, no gold, no cattle. I bring only my word, my spear, and my life." A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall. Izimba. A name that carried weight. The warriors of Izimba were known across the land, men who fought like lions, whose loyalty was unbreakable, whose warriors never bowed to kings. And yet, here was one of them, standing before the throne of Udi, offering himself as Odono's husband. King Ofoma, weak but still sharp of mind, watched the exchange from his throne. His once mighty frame had grown frail, but his eyes still held the wisdom of decades. He studied Obina, then turned to Odono. "My daughter," he rasped, his voice carrying over the silence. "This man has offered his hand. Do you accept?" The question hung in the air. It was her choice. Her future. If she refused, the throne would slip from her grasp. But if she accepted, if she married a stranger, what then? Odono took a slow step forward, searching Obina's face for deception, for weakness, for any sign that he was like the other men who had feared her. She found none. "You would marry a woman no man dares to claim?" she asked, her voice careful, testing him. Obinna did not flinch. "I do not fear strong women," he said simply. "Only weak men fear strength." A flicker of something almost like a smile ghosted across Odono's lips. This man intrigued her. And so, standing before the kingdom that doubted her, before a sister who sought her downfall, before a council eager to strip her of her birthright, Odono made her choice. "Then let the gods bear witness," she declared, her voice ringing through the hall. "I accept." Gasps filled the air. Amora's face darkened with fury, and Chief Chitty's jaw tightened in barely concealed rage. The game they had played, the plot they had so carefully woven, had just been undone in a single moment. But the battle was far from over. The wedding was set for one moon cycle later, giving the kingdom time to prepare. Yet, beneath the celebrations, beneath the songs of victory, danger brewed. Obinna was a threat. Not just to Amora's ambitions, not just to Chief Chitty's hunger for power, but to every man who had wanted Udi for himself. A common warrior from Izimba, marrying the future queen. It was an insult to the noble houses, a slap to tradition, a move that disrupted the carefully laid plans of those who sought control. And so, in the dark corners of the palace, whispers turned to plots. Obinna had to be removed. The first attempt came swiftly. 3 nights after the announcement, as Obinna trained alone in the palace courtyard, a figure moved in the shadows. A blade glinted under the moonlight, fast and silent. But not fast enough. Obinna turned, his reflexes honed by years of war, and caught the assassin's wrist mid-strike. A struggle ensued, a flash of steel, a grunt of pain, and the assassin fell to the ground, clutching his wounded side. Guards rushed in, torches illuminating the scene. The man was unmasked. One of Chief Chitty's personal guards. The message was clear. Obinna was not welcome. King Ofoma was furious, but his illness had weakened his grip on power. Chief Chitty, ever the politician, feigned ignorance. A rogue act, he claimed. A shameful betrayal by a disloyal soldier. He will be punished. But Odono knew better. This was war. If she was to secure her throne, she and Obinna would have to fight for it. Together. As the days passed, Odono and Obinna trained side by side, preparing not just for marriage, but for battle. Their bond grew, built not on courtly love, but on mutual respect, on the knowledge that they were standing against a tide that wished to drown them. For the first time, Odono was not alone. But the greatest challenge was yet to come. Because in Udi, a royal wedding was not just a ceremony. It was a trial. Before a king or queen could wed, they had to complete the test of the gods, a series of trials designed to prove their worthiness. And for Odono and Obinna, the test would be unlike any before. For the gods themselves had taken notice. And they were watching. The test of the gods had been spoken of in hushed tones for centuries, a series of sacred trials that no unworthy ruler could survive. For Odono and Obinna, it would not only determine their right to rule but also their right to exist. The kingdom of Udi had seen many leaders take the trial, but never had there been a challenge such as this. Never had a warrior princess stood at the altar, with a man of unknown lineage by her side, facing not only the gods but a kingdom eager for their downfall. If they failed, they would not leave the sacred grounds alive. At dawn, the royal court, the elders, and the people of Udi gathered at the Valley of Echoes, the sacred grounds where rulers were tested. The valley was a vast expanse of land carved into the earth, surrounded by towering cliffs where the gods were said to whisper their will. No one could interfere with the trials, not even the king himself. It was said that those who were unworthy would be swallowed by the valley, never to return. Odono had trained for war, but this. This was something no spear or sword could prepare her for. The first trial was the test of strength. Warriors of Udi, chosen by the elders, would step forward, one by one, and attempt to subdue Obinna in combat. A future king must be mightier than any warrior in his land, the high priest declared. Obinna faced 6 men, each known for their strength, each with their own reason to see him fall. The first came forward, a brute of a man wielding a staff taller than Obinna himself. The fight was short. A swift movement, a well-placed strike, and the warrior crumpled to the ground. The second opponent was faster, skilled in the art of deception, but Obinna was relentless, countering each strike until his opponent fell. One by one, the challengers came, and one by one, they fell. The warrior from Izimba stood victorious, bloodied but unbroken. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Obinna had passed the first test. But the gods were not done. The second trial was the test of wisdom. Adonna was led before the sacred council, where riddles of the gods were spoken. A ruler must be wise, for wisdom is the true blade of a kingdom, the priests intoned. The riddles were ancient, designed to trap the foolish and expose the weak. "What is the one thing that grows stronger the more it is shared?" asked the priest. Adonna did not hesitate. "Knowledge," she answered. The second riddle followed. "What can devour mountains, yet be destroyed by a single drop of water?" "Fire," she replied. Each question tested not only her mind but her understanding of the land, of war, of power. At last, the priest nodded. The gods have found her worthy. 2 trials had been conquered. But the final test would be the deadliest. The third and last trial was the test of spirit. No one truly knew what it entailed, only that many who entered never returned. The test was conducted in the Cave of Whispers, where the gods were said to speak directly to those who sought their blessing. Adonna and Obinna were led to the mouth of the cave, given nothing but torches, and sent inside. "You must face what lies within," the priest said, his voice solemn. "Only those who return together shall be deemed worthy." As they stepped into the darkness, the air grew thick, the silence pressing against their skin. Then, the whispers began. Adonna felt them first, the voices of the gods, but also the voices of doubt. They slithered into her mind, whispering the fears she had buried deep inside. "You are not meant to rule," one voice sneered. "You have no husband, only a stranger. You are alone." Another voice, softer, crueler, took the form of her sister. "Amora is the true queen," it whispered. "You will fail. Udi will fall because of you." Adonna clenched her fist, her breathing ragged. She would not break. She had come too far. She turned to Obinna, but his face was pale, his eyes wide. He was hearing his own whispers. "You will never be enough," the voice told him. "You are not of royal blood. You are not worthy of her. She will leave you." Obinna trembled, but when his eyes met Adonna's, something in them steadied. "They are lies," he whispered. "They are only words." The whispers grew louder, furious now. The cave trembled. The gods were not pleased. Adonna knew what had to be done. She took Obinna's hand and, together, they stepped forward, deeper into the abyss, past the fear, past the doubt. They walked until the whispers faded into silence. When they emerged from the cave, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. They had passed. The high priest stood before them, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. "The gods have spoken," he declared. "Adonna and Obinna are worthy." The valley erupted in cheers, but not everyone celebrated. Amora watched from the crowd, her nails digging into her palms. Chief Chiti's expression darkened. Their plan had failed. But if they could not stop Adonna through trials, there was only one option left. Eliminate her. The victory at the Cave of Whispers should have marked the beginning of peace, but instead, it became the catalyst for something far more sinister. Though the gods had spoken, though Odonor and Obina had proven their worth, not all hearts in Udi rejoiced. In the dark corners of the palace, whispers of discontent grew sharper, and in the minds of those who sought power, new plots began to take shape. Odonor had survived the trials, but could she survive the people who wanted her dead? Among those who seethed with rage was Amora, the once beloved sister who had long awaited her moment of triumph. She had spent her life being adored, showered with praise, while Odonor had been feared. And yet, it was Odonor who stood on the brink of power, with the kingdom singing her name. "It should have been me," Amora muttered under her breath as she walked through the royal gardens. "I was born to be queen, not a forgotten second daughter." Her thoughts burned with resentment, but she was not alone in her anger. Chief Chiti had not given up either. Late that evening, Amora was summoned to a secret gathering beneath the great Iroko tree where conspirators met in the shadows. Chief Chiti, flanked by a group of noblemen, waited for her. "The gods may have spoken," Chiti said, his voice low and sharp, "but mortals still rule the land. If we allow Odonor to ascend the throne, she will change Udi forever. And we cannot let that happen." Amora's heart pounded, torn between loyalty and ambition. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Chiti leaned closer. "The people do not love her. They fear her. And fear can be turned into hatred if given the right push. If we remove Odonor, Udi would demand a ruler they trust, someone beloved, someone they can follow without question." His eyes glowed in the dim firelight. "That ruler is you." Amora hesitated. Betrayal was not a path one could return from. But the image of Odonor, standing proud beside Obina, the kingdom chanting her name, it was too much to bear. Slowly, she nodded. "What must I do?" Chiti smiled. "You will play your part when the time comes. The rest is already in motion." The next morning, chaos erupted in Udi. A messenger arrived at the palace gates, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dust and sweat. "Attack," he gasped, collapsing before the guards. "The warriors of Ida have raided the northern villages. Houses burned. People slain. We need aid." The council was thrown into disorder. Udi had been at peace with Ida for years. Why attack now? King Ofoma, too weak to leave his chambers, called for an emergency council. "Odonor," he said, his voice heavy with age and illness, "this is your test as a leader. You and Obina must take the warriors and drive them back. Show Udi that you can defend her." Odonor did not hesitate. "We will leave at once, father." That night, under the cover of darkness, Odonor and Obina led Udi's warriors north. The journey was grueling, the air thick with the scent of fire and blood. But when they arrived at the villages, they found something unexpected: silence. The homes were not burning. The people were not screaming. Instead, they were waiting, their faces filled with unease. "What is this?" Obina muttered, gripping his spear. "Something is wrong." Then, an ambush. From the trees, from the shadows, warriors emerged, not from Ida, but from Udi itself. Odonor's breath caught. "Treachery," she shouted, raising her sword just as the first wave of attackers crashed into them. Steel clashed against steel, the air ringing with battle cries. It was a trap. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone had sent them away from the capital, leaving Udi vulnerable. And in that moment, Odonor realized the truth. This was not an invasion. This was a coup. Back in the capital, as the warriors fought in the north, Amora stood on the palace steps, dressed in mourning robes. The people of Udi gathered before her, their faces twisted in grief and rage. "A great tragedy has befallen us," she declared, her voice breaking. My sister and her husband have fallen in battle. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She was deceived by Obinna, the warrior from Izimba. He led her into danger, and now she is gone. But we cannot mourn forever. Udi must have a ruler. One who will not abandon her people. One who will restore peace. The people, confused and grieving, looked to her for guidance. Long live Queen Amora, someone shouted. And just like that, the kingdom turned. But Amora had made one fatal mistake. Odonor was not dead. The battle at the northern villages had been fierce, but Odonor and Obinna had fought like demons, cutting through their would-be assassins with unrelenting fury. Bloodied but alive, they had slain their attackers and taken those who remained captive. We must return to Udi, Odonor said, her chest heaving. Now. And so, as Amora sat upon the throne, as Chief Chiti celebrated his victory, Odonor and Obinna rode toward the capital, bringing war with them. Night fell over Udi, but the air was thick with tension. Fires burned in the city square as Amora sat on the throne she had stolen, draped in the garments of a queen, the golden crown heavy upon her head. Chief Chiti stood beside her, his lips curled in satisfaction. The people had accepted her rule, for now. But even in her moment of triumph, Amora could not silence the creeping fear in her heart. What if Odonor was still alive? She had seen nobody. She had heard no final words. And in her dreams, her sister's voice echoed, I am coming. And then, the gates of Udi thundered with war. The people rushed to the city walls, their hearts pounding. A figure on horseback stood at the entrance, her silhouette illuminated by the torches. A woman, her body clad in armor, a red cloak billowing behind her. Her sword gleamed with the blood of those who had tried to kill her. Odonor had returned. A roar of disbelief spread through the kingdom. The warrior princess lives, someone cried. The gods have brought her back. Amora shot to her feet, panic in her eyes. No. She was supposed to be dead. Chief Chiti's face darkened. She has come for her throne. We must finish this now. With a signal, the palace guards rushed toward the gates, swords drawn. But they were not fast enough. Odonor and Obinna led a charge unlike anything Udi had ever seen. Warriors loyal to the true queen stormed the palace, cutting down the betrayers with swift, merciless strikes. The people, once silent in fear, rose up. They had seen the truth. They had seen the lies. And now, they fought for their true ruler. The city erupted into chaos, streets filled with battle cries, the clang of steel on steel, the cries of those who had followed Amora's deception. Odonor moved through the battle like a storm, her blade finding every traitor in her path. She was not just fighting for her throne, she was fighting for Udi's soul. Amora, seeing the tides turning, turned to flee. We must leave now, she hissed at Chiti. But before they could escape, Odonor stepped into the throne room. Blood stained her armor, her breath was ragged, but her eyes burned with unrelenting fury. Going somewhere, sister? She asked. Amora's face twisted in desperation. Odonor, please, this was never meant to be. I only wanted to protect Udi. But Odonor shook her head. You wanted the throne. You wanted me gone. And now, you will face the judgment of the people. Chief Chiti lunged at Odonor, sword raised, but he never reached her. Obinna's spear struck him before he could even take another step. The chief staggered, choking on his last breath before collapsing. The true betrayer was dead. Amora, now alone, fell to her knees. Please, she whispered. Have mercy. I am your sister. Odonor stared at her for a long moment. Then, she turned to the guards. Take her away. She will answer for her crimes before the gods. The war was over. Udi belonged to its rightful queen. And as the sun rose the next day, Odono sat on her father's throne, not as a bride, not as a sister, but as a warrior, as a ruler, as the mighty queen no man dared to claim. Thank you besties for watching till the end. What do you think of this story, and did it remind you of anyone? Please share in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to Folktales by IJ, so we can keep bringing you inspiring African folktale stories on Folktales by IJ.